The sirens weren't for a car crash, they were for me. It was 7:42 a.m. when two squad cars pulled up in front of my house, lights flashing like a crime scene. I was standing barefoot on my porch, coffee in hand, when the loudspeaker barked, "Step outside, Ethan Cole. Hands where we can see them." My neighbors peeked from behind their blinds like it was the best entertainment they'd had all year. And there she was, Victoria Hale, HOA president and self-proclaimed queen of the block, standing proudly in her silk robe, watching it all unfold with a smile sharp enough to cut glass. Her plan was simple: humiliate me, paint me as a criminal, and kick me out of Magnolia Creek for good. All because I ignored her outrageous $5,000 fine for grass that was allegedly half an inch too tall. What Victoria didn't know: the man she just tried to ruin wasn't an ex-con like she thought. I was an undercover federal agent on a case bigger than her suburban kingdom could ever imagine. And her little stunt, it just turned a neighborhood feud into a federal disaster for her. The cops left after running my ID, disappointed they didn't snag a fugitive. But Victoria, she wasn't done. Her smug little wave from across the street said, "This isn't over." I slammed the door behind me, fury boiling under my skin. I'd been in some tight spots before, drug raids gone wrong, undercover meets with psychos who'd kill you for blinking wrong. But this was humiliation in front of every retiree and soccer mom in Magnolia Creek. All because of a damn lawn, and here's the kicker: she wasn't lying about that fine. The notice was right there on my kitchen counter like a neon insult. Violation grass height exceeds HOA standards by zero point 0.6 inches, fine $5,000. Additional $500 per day until resolved, $5,000 for grass. You could feed a family for months with that money. But for Victoria, this wasn't about the lawn, it was about power. Victoria Hale was the kind of HOA president who treated her position like a Supreme Court seat. Late 40s, Botox frozen smile power walking at sunrise like she owned every blade of grass in this subdivision. Magnolia Creek was her empire, and every resident was a subject under her iron rule. Normally, I'd ignore her petty games, but my assignment made that impossible. See, my cover was simple: Ethan Cole, 34, down on his luck freelance IT guy trying to restart life after some mistakes. Truth, I was a federal agent deep undercover, tracking an opioid theft ring, suspected of funneling stolen prescription pills through upscale retirement communities. Magnolia Creek checked every box: high value homes, wealthy retirees, and plenty of medication in circulation. I'd spent 6 months building this cover, moving into a rental house, setting up my tech gear, which was actually surveillance equipment wired to trace online pill exchanges. My job was to blend in, earn trust, and gather intel quietly. The last thing I needed was HOA drama drawing eyes to me, and Victoria wasn't just watching, she was hunting. The first red flag: the day I caught her staring through binoculars from her porch like a neighborhood sniper. At first, I thought it was garden variety nosiness, but then I noticed the notebook pages filled with obsessive scribbles every time my blinds were open. New guy, expensive monitors, multiple screens, odd hours, no job, no friends. Something's off. She was building a case against me. And thanks to some private investigator she'd probably hired, she'd found just enough smoke to think there was fire, a sealed juvenile record for possession when I was 19. My bosses loved that little detail because it made my cover bulletproof. To everyone else, I looked like a reformed screw-up trying to stay clean. Except Victoria didn't see a redemption story. She saw a threat to her precious order. The tension escalated when I spotted something that didn't add up, not about me, but about her. It started small. One afternoon, I saw Victoria heading into Mrs. Green's house, a sweet 78-year-old widow who lived 2 doors down. She carried a medical tote and a clipboard. Odd, since Victoria wasn't a nurse, at least not anymore. Rumor had it she'd left the profession years ago. Through my side window, I watched her organize medications for Mrs. Green. All smiles and reassurance. "Just making sure you're safe, darling. Too many pills can be dangerous." It sounded altruistic, neighbor helping neighbor. But then my instincts caught something chilling. She wasn't just sorting pills. She was cataloging them, snapping photos of prescription labels, counting tablets, and jotting numbers on her tablet like she was running inventory for a pharmacy. Then came the kicker. She held up a bottle of heart medication and said, "Oh dear, these are expired. Let me dispose of them safely for you." Only they weren't expired. I'd memorized enough medication names in my career to know those pills had months left before expiration. But Mrs. Green didn't know that. She smiled gratefully and let Victoria walk out with 30 brand new pills worth hundreds of dollars. 10 minutes later, Victoria returned with a bottle of what looked like generic meds and a receipt, probably fake, and charged Mrs. Green $50 for the service. Mrs. Green thanked her like she'd just performed open heart surgery. That was the moment my undercover instincts lit up like a siren. This wasn't neighborly kindness. It was a scam with medical precision, steal high-value meds from resident A, replace with worthless substitutes, sell the real stuff to resident B as discount alternatives and pocket the cash. By the time I started digging, the pattern was everywhere. Victoria had an entire route widows, retirees, anyone dependent on expensive prescriptions. She'd built a reputation as the community's guardian angel, the one who helped seniors save money on meds. They adored her. Meanwhile, she was running a six-figure racket under everyone's nose, and if my suspicion was right, she wasn't acting alone. The speed at which those stolen meds hit the black market meant she had upstream buyers, probably an entire network feeding off these so-called medication reviews. Now, I had two problems. One, bring down Victoria's operation without blowing my cover. Two, survive the HOA war she'd declared on me, because Victoria, she was done playing nice. The grass vine was just the first volley. The next morning, I woke up to another notice taped to my door, $2,000 fine for unsightly trash placement. My bins were in my driveway on trash day. Day after that, one of $500 for unauthorized vehicle parking. My car in my driveway. Then came the anonymous complaints, city inspector knocking on my door about health code violations, HOA lawyer letters threatening liens on my rental. Victoria was weaponizing the rule book like it was a machine gun trying to bleed me dry or force me out. But here's the thing about people like Victoria, they think persistence equals power. They don't realize that every strike they make just pushes someone like me deeper into war mode. And this war, it wasn't going to end with a trimmed lawn. Victoria's harassment campaign reached a fever pitch the day she walked up my driveway with that icy smile and a legal-sized envelope clutched in her manicured hand. "Mr. Cole," she said sweetly, like venom dipped in honey, "you've officially violated community standards for the fourth time this week. We'll be discussing your conduct at tonight's HOA meeting. Attendance is mandatory." I kept my tone calm. "You've fined me for grass trash, and now what?" Existing, her lips curved into something between amusement and contempt. "Noise violation. Multiple residents reported suspicious activity late at night. You understand how unsettling that is for a community like ours." I almost laughed out loud. Suspicious activity? Yeah, like trying to stop a criminal ring from killing old people. But I didn't flinch. That would have been blood in the water. Victoria tilted her head, her sharp eyes sliding past me into my living room, where my three-monitor setup glowed faintly from the surveillance feeds I'd been reviewing. For a split second, her expression flickered. Calculation, recognition, interesting equipment for someone who claims to be an out-of-work IT consultant, she said casually, but her voice had an edge now. "And odd hours encrypted connections. Makes a person wonder what you're really doing in Magnolia Creek." My pulse spiked. That wasn't idle curiosity, that was an opening salvo. She'd done her homework, probably dug deeper than anyone should have. And then came the dagger. "Funny thing, I ran your background through a friend of mine. Juvenile record, drug possession sealed, but let's just say the right people know how to find things." Boom. There it was, the ace she thought would bury me. She believed she had me cornered, mysterious new guy, shady, past expensive tech gear, weird hours. From her perspective, I wasn't just a nuisance, I was a ticking time bomb threatening her pristine kingdom. The meeting that night was pure theater. The Magnolia Creek Clubhouse, usually reserved for wine tastings and book clubs, looked like a courtroom assembled by control freaks. Victoria stood at the head of the room, flanked by her loyalists, mostly retirees, who worshipped the ground she power walked on. Behind her, a corkboard plastered with printed screenshots, photos of my setup, my car, my trash bins. She even had bullet points: unemployed male resident, questionable income, unusual surveillance equipment, sealed criminal record. When she dropped that last one, the room erupted in whispers. I felt every pair of eyes drill into me like I was about to confess to hiding bodies in my crawl space. I stood slowly, let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable, then spoke in a steady voice. Yes, I made mistakes when I was young. I paid for them. That's why records are sealed, because people deserve second chances. I work freelance IT from home. Odd hours come with the territory. None of that gives anyone the right to harass me with $15,000 in bogus fines. That sparked murmurs from the younger families, the ones sick of Victoria's HOA dictatorship. And then, like an angel with perfect timing, Emily Harris, a school teacher who lived 2 streets over, stood up. "This is ridiculous," she said firmly. "Grass height noise, trash bins. This isn't community protection. It's abuse of power." Victoria's Botox smile tightened. "Emily, with all due respect, you don't understand the security risks." "Oh, I understand just fine," Emily cut in. "You fined 3 other neighbors this year for nonsense violations. Now you're parading someone's sealed record in public. That's a lawsuit waiting to happen." For the first time, Victoria's confidence wavered. And then came the moment that cracked her perfect facade. Mrs. Green, the sweet widow Victoria had robbed blind, spoke up from the back. "Victoria helps us," she said shakily. She saves us money on our prescriptions. If this man is investigating her—" The room froze. Investigating. One word too many. Victoria's head snapped toward Mrs. Green, eyes blazing with silent fury. Emily pounced. "Investigating. Why would anyone need to investigate Victoria?" Mrs. Green stammered. "She just helps with medications." My instincts went nuclear. This was it, the loose thread I needed to unravel the whole scheme. I leaned forward, voice calm but laced with steel. "Victoria, are you dispensing medication in this community? Because that would require a medical license and DEA clearance, both of which I'm guessing you don't have anymore." Gasps rippled through the room. Victoria's mask cracked for just a second, rage flashing like lightning, before she smoothed it over. "I provide education," she said sweetly, "helping seniors avoid dangerous interactions, organizing their prescriptions because no one else cares enough to." Jenny Blake, an actual registered nurse and another HOA member, stood abruptly. "That's practicing medicine without a license, Victoria, and if you've been touching prescriptions, that's a felony." The murmurs turned into a roar. Victoria slammed the gavel, voice sharp as broken glass. "This meeting is over. Mr. Cole, expect further action from our legal team." She swept out like a queen retreating from battle, but I caught the flicker of panic in her eyes. She wasn't worried about HOA bylaws anymore. She was worried I'd just exposed her empire. And she was right. That night, as I watched her house from my front window, I saw the first signs of desperation. Lights on in every room, shredded paper and trash bags by the curb, a frantic phone call on her porch, her voice tight. "Everything is fine, just handle it. No mistakes this time." What she didn't know was that she'd just crossed a line she couldn't uncross. Because HOA fines were one thing. But the way she said "handle it," that sounded like a woman planning something far worse than another violation notice. And I wasn't wrong. Within 24 hours, Victoria Hale went from power-drunk HOA tyrant to full-blown predator. And I was the prey. I dealt with drug lords, gang enforcers, and men who could end a life with a glance. But Victoria Hale. She was a different kind of monster, one wrapped in cashmere sweaters and HOA newsletters. The night after the meeting, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, her words replayed in my head. "Handle it. No mistakes this time." That wasn't HOA business talk, that was organized crime language. My gut told me Victoria wasn't just going to keep harassing me, she was going to eliminate me. By sunrise, my paranoia was in overdrive. I swept my house for bugs, checked security cameras twice, and set an alert on my encrypted line for any unauthorized database searches. If she had the resources to dig up sealed records, she had connections I didn't want to underestimate. Then came the email, a cheery HOA newsletter with pastel headers, community potluck. This Saturday, hosted by Victoria Hale, theme family recipes for a stronger neighborhood. Family recipes. Yeah, right. This wasn't hospitality, it was an opportunity. A controlled environment where she could make a move without looking like a villain. And then it hit me, like a freight train, my medical file. During her background check, she could have easily accessed my rental application, which included emergency contact info and my severe shellfish allergy. One dose of concentrated extract, and I'd be dead before dessert. The more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Victoria was methodical. She'd been a nurse once. She understood anatomy dosage and how to stage a death that looked like an accident. I ran through the scenario in my head: crowded potluck, everyone eating, nobody paying attention. I take a few bites, start choking, lips swell, throat closes. Victoria, ever the Good Samaritan, rushes in with CPR and fake concern. By the time paramedics arrive, it's over. Death by allergic reaction. Tragic, but plausible. And she'd walk away looking like a hero. That thought iced my veins. I wasn't just investigating a pill thief anymore. I was hunting and being hunted by a woman who knew how to kill clean. So I prepared, not just as a cop, but as a survivor. I packed antihistamines, an EpiPen, and a hidden camera in my watch. And most importantly, I made a decision I would not eat a single bite at that potluck. Saturday came like a ticking bomb. Magnolia Creek's community center was decked out in string lights and mason jar centerpieces as if Instagram had vomited on suburbia. The smell of casseroles and pies hung in the air like a false promise of comfort. Victoria floated through the room like a queen hosting a coronation. Perfect hair, radiant smile greeting every guest with a hug that made me want to disinfect my soul. And then she zeroed in on me, Ethan. Her voice dripped sugar. So glad you came. We've had our differences, but community events bring people together, don't they? Sure, I said evenly. Nothing like carbs and small talk to heal old wounds. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. She guided me to the buffet, hand lightly on my arm, too familiar, too controlled. Then came the kill shot. You have to try my pasta salad, she cooed. Family recipe, very special ingredients. I almost laughed at the audacity. She might as well have said, "Here's your death in a bowl." I took the plate, thanked her, and sat at a table near Emily and Mike, two allies who had no idea they were sitting front row at a murder attempt. As the room buzzed with laughter and clinking forks, I played my part. I twirled pasta around my fork, pretended to chew, nodded appreciatively when Victoria's eyes flicked toward me. In reality, I was palming every bite into napkins, slipping them into a Ziploc bag I'd stashed in my jacket. Old cop habit preserved the evidence. Victoria watched me like a hawk. Every few minutes, she drifted by with faux concern. Not hungry, you barely touched your plate. Pacing myself, I said, lightly, big guy like me, carbs hit hard. But I saw the flicker of frustration behind her mask. Her timeline was slipping. She expected me writhing on the floor by now, not making small talk about football schedules. By 8:00 p.m., when dessert rolled out and I was still breathing fine, Victoria's veneer started to crack. Her laughter was a pitch too high, her hands a little too fidgety. When I stood to grab a drink, she blocked my path with a wine glass in hand, accidentally spilling red across my shirt. "Oh no, let me help you clean that up in the kitchen." "Yeah, right." I declined smoothly. "Thanks, but I'll handle it at home." Her jaw tightened. She knew the plan had failed. But failure for someone like Victoria wasn't the end, it was an escalation. I left that night alive, adrenaline still spiking the Ziploc bag, burning a hole in my jacket pocket. When I got home, I pulled out my portable test kit. A few swabs, a reagent vial, and boom, the result lit up bright red. Shellfish proteins. Not accidental trace amounts. Concentrated extract. She hadn't just tried to scare me, she'd tried to kill me. I called my handler immediately. Victoria Hale just attempted homicide. I have physical evidence sending samples now. Sarah's voice was steel. That changes everything. You're greenlit to break cover. We're moving to arrest full federal. But I wasn't celebrating. Because if Victoria was willing to poison me in a room full of witnesses, what would she do now that she knew her plan failed? The answer came less than an hour later, when I saw headlights sweep across my living room wall and tires screech down the street. Victoria's SUV, gone in a blur of panic. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just a neighborhood war anymore. This was a manhunt. Victoria's failed attempt didn't just rattle her, it detonated her entire facade. Within an hour of the potluck, her lights went dark, curtains drawn. By the time my surveillance cams picked up her SUV peeling out of the driveway, I knew one thing for certain. Magnolia Creek's Queen Bee wasn't planning a quiet night in. She was running, and running like someone who'd done it before. I called Sarah on the encrypted line. She's bolting. Full emergency mode bags, boxes, everything. This isn't panic, it's protocol. Sarah didn't even hesitate, understood. Forward any visuals, we're looping in the bureau. 10 minutes later, I transmitted the photos from my cams. Victoria, in a ball cap and jeans, loading black duffel bags into her Lexus like she was evacuating a war zone. No jewelry, no HOA pearls, just cash supplies and enough paranoia to choke a horse. You were right, Sarah said grimly after running her first checks. This woman isn't just your average neighborhood tyrant. We pulled her old nursing license records. They stopped at Texas in 2021. No official surrender, just vanished. That word chilled me. Vanished. People like Victoria don't just walk away from careers unless they've got a damn good reason. By midnight, the FBI had entered the chat, literally. My secure laptop pinged with an incoming from Special Agent Jennifer Hayes. Upload all files. Photos, evidence logs, potluck, sample results. Starting facial recognition sweep now. Me, she's ex-nurse with medical precision in her crimes. Pill theft from elderly felony level distribution, attempted homicide on a federal officer. Hayes understood. If her MO matches any open fugitive cases, we'll know in minutes. I sat in the dark, adrenaline humming, watching Magnolia Creek sleep like it wasn't sitting on top of a crime scene. Across the street, Victoria's house looked dead. No lights, no life, just the hollow shell of suburban perfection she'd curated so well. Then came the ping. A single line that changed everything. Match found 89% similarity. Rebecca Foster, federal fugitive, wanted for elder fraud, drug theft, and 2 confirmed homicides. Rebecca Foster. I read the details twice, my stomach turning. 3 years ago, she ran a near-identical scam in Arizona, stealing prescription meds from seniors under the guise of help. 2 victims died from pill substitutions. One detective investigating her never made it home from a dinner party, and then she disappeared. Until now. Magnolia Creek's HOA president wasn't just a control freak. She was a chameleon, a killer hiding behind bake sales and bylaws. I asked Hayes the question, clawing at my throat. How bad is she? Hayes didn't sugarcoat it. She's disciplined, resourceful, and has a nursing background that makes her lethal. If she senses capture, she'll pivot to survival mode, and that includes killing anyone who threatens her freedom. I didn't need the warning. I'd seen that calculation in her eyes the moment I refused her kitchen cleanup stunt. She'd already tried to make me the next obituary. The Bureau moved fast. Within an hour, Victoria Hale ceased to exist on paper. Every system updated to her real identity, Rebecca Foster, wanted by the FBI, DEA, and half the alphabet soup of law enforcement. A federal task force assembled overnight. DEA agents for the drug angle, elder fraud specialists for victim restitution, fugitive recovery for the takedown. My role shifted from undercover investigator to key witness and, ironically, bait. But Rebecca wasn't giving us the luxury of time. By dawn, her Lexus was found abandoned at a rest stop off I-45, stripped of plates and wiped clean like it never existed. Security footage showed her ditching the SUV and slipping into a stolen pickup 2 exits north. Classic fugitive playbook switch vehicles, switch appearance, disappear into the sprawl. Hayes briefed us in a secure channel. She's carrying cash and forged IDs, likely heading South Mexico border, maybe Miami for a boat exit. She's prepped for this. Don't underestimate her. She wasn't kidding. When analysts pulled Rebecca's financials, they found $40,000 in liquidated assets in the last 48 hours, plus a pattern of calls to burner numbers linked to black market medical suppliers. Translation: she had a network, and networks buy time. The Bureau unleashed every resource: highway patrol alerts, border checkpoints, flagged Coast Guard on standby. They even dropped her face into every TSA terminal from Dallas to Miami with a flashing "Do Not Board" tag. But I knew Rebecca. She wasn't going to stroll through security like an amateur. No, she'd burrow underground, slip into the medical shadow economy where fake credentials and untraceable pills buy you shelter. So I played my card intel from months of undercover work. I mapped every shady contact Magnolia Creek's retirees had whispered about: the friendly doctors, the discount pharmacies. Most were harmless hustlers, but a few names lit up the Bureau's board. Cross-referencing those names with Rebecca's call records gave us a lead: a back alley clinic in Miami run by a disgraced surgeon with a side hustle in forged prescriptions. If Rebecca needed a safe house, that was it. Hayes didn't hesitate. Deploying tactical. Your writing point on intel. Wheels up in 30. As the jet roared down the tarmac, I stared out at the night sky, a bitter laugh curling in my throat. This all started because of a grass fine, a stupid, petty $5,000 penalty for half an inch of overgrowth. And now, we were about to kick down doors hunting a serial killer who thought she could weaponize HOA bylaws and charm her way into people's medicine cabinets. I checked my Glock, ran through the op brief one more time, and made a silent promise. This doesn't end in another headline about a cop who didn't make it home. Not tonight, not on my watch. Rebecca Foster wanted to play Queen of the Cul-de-sac. Time to crown her with handcuffs. The Miami air hit like a furnace when we landed. Even at dawn, the humidity clung to my skin like a second shirt. We rolled out in an unmarked SUV, me riding shotgun, next to Agent Hayes, a no-nonsense veteran with eyes that had seen too many predators dressed as neighbors. Our convoy of black Suburbans cruised past pastel motels and shuttered strip malls until we reached the edge of Little Havana. The target, a weather-beaten building that looked like an abandoned dental office. But according to surveillance, it was very much alive. The kind of place where you could buy a fake DEA license along with a side of antibiotics. Rebecca's inside, Hayes said, lowering her binoculars. Thermal scan shows one primary heat signature and 2 smaller likely associates. My gut clenched. She'd traded HOA boardrooms for the underworld's back rooms without skipping a beat. The tactical team moved like shadows, flanking the entrances with suppressed weapons. I checked my Glock and body cam, every nerve wired tight. This wasn't about grass fines or HOA feuds anymore. This was a predator cornered and cornered. Predators don't go quietly. Hayes gave the signal. Breach time. The first door exploded inward with a battering ram. Shouts echoed through the narrow hall, FBI hands where we can see them. I was second through the entry, sweeping left into a cluttered exam room reeking of antiseptic and desperation. A man in scrubs froze mid-step, hands shooting up. Not Rebecca. My adrenaline spiked. Clear, I barked, moving deeper. Then I saw her. Rebecca Victoria, whatever name she wore, was standing in the back corridor, duffel bag slung across her chest. Glock 43 in her hand like she'd been born with it. No more silk robes or HOA smiles, just cold feral focus. Drop it, I shouted, weapon trained on her center mass. For a flicker of a second, her eyes met mine. And I swear I saw the calculation, the same ruthless algorithm that let her swap meds without blinking, the same one that almost fed me a lethal dose under twinkling string lights. You think you're the hero, she said, voice calm, as if we were chatting over a HOA newsletter. But those people, they needed me. I kept them alive when Big Pharma bled them dry. What did you ever do for them? I didn't flinch. Kept them from dying because of you. Her jaw tightened. The gun dipped an inch. Then Hayes's voice thundered from behind me. Rebecca Foster, you're under arrest for elder fraud, drug theft, and attempted murder of a federal officer. This is your one chance, drop it. Rebecca's gaze darted between the exits, the agents closing in, and me, the man she'd failed to kill. For a heartbeat, the room shrank to that single decision: fight or surrender. Finally, with a sharp exhale, she let the Glock clatter to the floor. Her duffel followed, spilling cash and pill bottles like the guts of her empire. Hayes cuffed her while reading rights in a voice as cold as stainless steel. Rebecca didn't resist. She just looked at me, something almost like respect or maybe hate, so deep it circled back to admiration. Guess you won, she said softly. I stared right back. No, the people you conned, the ones you poisoned, they won. You just finally lost. As they let her out, I glanced at the duffel bag bleeding green across the linoleum. For 2 years, that money bought silence, loyalty, and a throne in Magnolia Creek. Now it was Exhibit A in a case that would bury her for decades. When the op wrapped, Hayes clapped a hand on my shoulder. Hell of a job, Cole. You didn't just nail a fugitive, you shut down a pipeline feeding stolen meds into 3 states. You saved lives. I nodded, but my chest felt heavier than victory. Because behind the stats and headlines were faces: Mrs. Green, with her brittle smile, Mr. Peterson, wheezing through half-dose blood pressure meds, the entire HOA duped by a woman they trusted more than family. That night, back at my temporary Miami safe house, I sat on the balcony overlooking the neon sprawl and cracked a warm beer. My phone buzzed a text from Emily. Is it true she's gone? Please tell me the nightmare is over. I typed back, it's over. You're safe now. Safe. A word that felt fragile as glass in a world where people like Rebecca existed. As the city hummed below, I made myself a promise. This wasn't the last time I'd see predators hiding behind picket fences. My sealed record, my scars, they weren't a curse. They were the perfect cover. And if it meant putting myself in HOA hell 100 more times to protect the vulnerable, then so be it. Because Magnolia Creek taught me one thing. Evil doesn't always wear gang colors or prowl dark alleys. Sometimes it hosts potluck smiles over fences and fines you $5,000 for grass. 3 days later, Magnolia Creek looked the same. On the surface, perfect lawns, pastel shutters, American flags waving in the Texas breeze. But underneath the neighborhood was a wound ripped open and cauterized in public. The FBI had come and gone, their black SUVs leaving tire ghosts on streets that usually only saw golf carts. Rebecca Foster's face, formerly Victoria Hale, Queen of the cul-de-sac, was plastered on every news channel. Former nurse and HOA president arrested in federal drug and fraud ring. And me, I was no longer Ethan Cole, the reclusive IT guy. That identity was dead. The HOA called an emergency community meeting to restore trust. This time, no string lights, no potluck, just a packed clubhouse buzzing with shock and shame. I stood at the front wearing a suit for the first time in months, badge heavy on my belt. Emily sat in the front row, arms folded tight, her eyes demanding answers. I cleared my throat. My name is Special Agent Ethan Cole. For the past 6 months, I've been working undercover here investigating a prescription drug diversion network targeting vulnerable seniors. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some residents clutched their pearls like they were in a courtroom drama. Rebecca Foster, known to you as Victoria Hale, wasn't just an HOA president. She was a federal fugitive wanted for elder fraud, drug theft, and homicide. Her so-called medication help was a front to steal your prescriptions and sell them on the black market. Mrs. Green burst into tears. She said she was saving us money. I stepped closer, my voice softer now. You weren't stupid, she was calculated. She used trust as a weapon. That's what predators do. Jenny, the real nurse, stood up, jaw tight. Those fake vitamins. That's why Mr. Carter collapsed last month. He thought he was taking his heart meds. The silence that followed felt like a physical weight pressing on every shoulder in the room. I took a deep breath. The Bureau has arranged medical evaluations for anyone affected. Full restitution will be pursued through federal court. But more than that, you need to understand this wasn't your fault. Evil doesn't always look like a thug in an alley. Sometimes it smiles at you from across a white picket fence. Emily's voice broke the hush. You almost died, didn't you? Our eyes met. She wasn't asking for drama, just truth. Yeah, I said simply. She tried to kill me at the potluck. Shellfish extract in the pasta salad. But she underestimated one thing: I don't give up easy. A murmur rolled through the room. Mike Foster, the contractor who'd always kept his head down, stood and raised his voice. You took down a killer and fixed this HOA mess in one shot. Hell, you're a damn hero. I shook my head. No heroes, just people doing their jobs. But if you want real change, it starts with you. And it did. Within a week, Emily was elected the new HOA president in a landslide. First order of business stripped the bylaws of Victoria's little tyrant tricks. Maximum fine $25, grass length limit, reasonable enough for someone with a life, transparent budgets, background checks for officers, and Jenny insisted on this zero tolerance for anyone claiming medical authority without credentials. Rebecca's former house became a community garden, a living tribute to the neighbors she exploited. Kids planted sunflowers where she once plotted control. Seniors gathered for coffee instead of covert pill swaps. The street felt lighter, like someone opened a window in a room that had been sealed too long. As for me, I didn't stick around for the harvest. My orders came down 2 weeks later: new assignment, new cover, new fight. Another gated paradise with secrets festering under its manicured lawns, this time in Arizona. On my last night in Magnolia Creek, the neighbors threw a barbecue in my honor. Real burgers, real laughter, no poison in sight. Emily clinked her soda against my beer and said, "Promise me one thing: when you take down the next Victoria, you'll call and tell me you're alive." Deal. I said, smiling for real this time. As I drove out the next morning, a fresh for rent sign swung in the breeze where my cover life had stood. I glanced in the rearview mirror at a neighborhood that nearly killed me and gave me a mission I'd carry to my last badge. Because here's the truth: monsters don't just hide in back alleys. Sometimes they run HOA boards and bake casseroles. And as long as they do, I'll be their badge, hidden eyes open, making damn sure their power trips don't end in body bags. Justice doesn't always roar in with sirens. Sometimes it starts with a grass fine. Evil doesn't always wear a mask or carry a gun. Sometimes it hosts HOA meetings and smiles while handing out help. Rebecca Foster Victoria Hale proved that power, no matter how small, can rot into something monstrous when fueled by ego and greed. She weaponized trust using her nursing past and HOA badge to control, manipulate, and destroy lives, all under the guise of being a good neighbor. This story isn't just about one woman's descent into crime, it's about complacency. It's about how communities trade vigilance for comfort, handing over unchecked authority because it feels convenient. When we ignore red flags, we invite predators to turn our safe havens into hunting grounds. Justice came for Rebecca, but not before lives were shattered. The lesson: question the systems and people who claim absolute control, because sometimes the deadliest poison doesn't come in a bottle, it comes in the form of blind trust. If this story made you rethink what's hiding behind white picket fences, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this with someone living under an HOA's iron fist. Drop a comment: have you ever dealt with an HOA gone rogue? Your story might be next in our series.